Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So nice to have you with us. As advertised, I'm going to be talking about the Earth Store Bodhisattvas, a story from the Lotus Sutra. So, and why? Ehe Dogen extensively drew on this story from the Lotus Sutra. His foundational teaching was in the Tendai tradition, and the Lotus Sutra is the central text that they focus on in that tradition. And so he often referred to it in his writing afterwards, and especially this story. So this piece of the Lotus Sutra talks about the Earth Store Bodhisattvas. It's quite a startling story. And I'll read a bit of the opening of this chapter right now to give you a sense of the language of it in translation. Then I'm going to give you, because it's a very, very long sutra, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I will give you the overview that Taigen Dan Leighton provides in this book, which is about the Lotus Sutra, Visions of Awakening Space and Time. This was his PhD dissertation, so it is quite academic, but he gives a really lovely summary of this story at the beginning. So, but here's how it is in the sutra. Then the Bodhisattva, so the Buddha is in a big assembly and he's giving this teaching on the Lotus Sutra. This chapter, set of chapters, is in the middle of that teaching. So then the Bodhisattvas who had arrived from other world realms, who were as numerous as the grains of sand in 8 Ganges rivers, stood up in the circle of the assembly, bowed to the Bhagavan, the Buddha, with hands together in homage and said these words. Bhagavan, if the Bhagavan will permit us, after the Tathagata has passed into nirvana, we too will teach this Dharma teaching in the Saha world realm. The Saha world realm is the everyday world we're in. We will read it, write it, and make offerings to it. We will be dedicated to this Dharma teaching. Bhagavan, teach well this Dharma teaching to us, so we can carry it forward. The Bhagavan then asked all those bodhisattvas, noble ones, why would you need to do this? In this Saha world realm, there are my thousands of Buddhist bodhisattvas who are as numerous as the grains of sand in 60 Ganges rivers. Each one of these bodhisattvas has, as followers, thousands of bodhisattvas who are themselves as numerous as the grains of sand in 60 Ganges rivers. And each of these bodhisattvas has that many followers too. In the future times, after I have passed into nirvana, they will possess this Dharma teaching and they will teach it. As soon as the Bhagavan had uttered these words, the entire Saha world realm cracked apart completely, was rent with fissures, and there came out from within those fissures the bodhisattvas who lived in the Saha world realm, the many hundreds of thousands of quintillions of bodhisattvas with their golden bodies and their 32 signs of a great being, who dwelled in the element of space beneath the great earth. They had heard the Bhagavan's words and came out from under the ground. Each one of these bodhisattvas had a following of bodhisattvas as numerous as the grains of sand in 60 Ganges rivers, in groups, great groups, along with the teachers of those groups. This is classic Mahayana language, right? Seems very over the top. So I'll read Taigen's summary of these 2 chapters because it's really, really intriguing. And it's been the source of a lot of interest and commentary over the years. So he says this narrative, which he's going to give you the paraphrase, is in chapters 15 and 16 of Kumarajiva's translation of the Lotus Sutra, the standard version in East Asia. So, a group of bodhisattvas have been visiting from a distant world system in order to hear Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, preach the Lotus Sutra. So they've all arrived, gods and goddesses and Buddhas from other universes. At the beginning of chapter 15, they asked the Buddha if he'd like them to return in the future to maintain the Lotus Sutra teaching. Shakyamuni Buddha has been soliciting such future assistance in previous chapters for the period to follow his imminent demise and passage into nirvana, and especially for the distant future evil age. Historically, many Lotus Sutra devotees have identified their own period with this evil age. We might feel somewhat the same. This was certainly true for Dogen's contemporaries in Kamakura, period Japan, who thought they had entered the degenerate age of Mappo, the final decline of the Dharma. It might seem true as well for contemporary interpreters in our own evil age of cycles of terrorist vengeance, environmental devastation, massive corruption, and preemptive wars of aggression. Now, Taiken Dan is writing this in, it would have been 2005. As soon as the visiting bodhisattvas make their offer, Shakyamuni declares their help unnecessary, whereupon from out of the open space under the ground simultaneously spring forth vast numbers of experienced, dedicated bodhisattvas. The immensity of their numbers and of their retinues of attendant bodhisattvas is expressed in conventional Mahayana mathematical metaphors about the number of grains of sand in the Ganges River. Each of the bodhisattvas offers appropriate ritual veneration to the Buddha. The names of their 4 leaders are mentioned: superior conduct, boundless conduct, pure conduct, and steadfast conduct. Those are their 4 leaders. Shakyamuni Buddha declares that for countless ages, all of these numerous bodhisattvas have been diligently practicing under the ground, have been present to help aid and awaken suffering beings, and will continue their beneficial practice and promulgation of the teaching even through the future evil age. Maitreya Buddha, predicted to be the next future incarnated Buddha, voices the questions of the startled and puzzled assembly of Shakyamuni's disciples as to the identities and backgrounds of these emerging bodhisattvas, previously unknown to the regular disciples. Where do they come from? Shakyamuni declares that he himself has trained all of these underground bodhisattvas. Even more perplexed, Maitreya asks, how could that be possible, as these unfamiliar underground bodhisattvas are obviously venerable sages, some considerably more aged than Shakyamuni? This would be like a 25-year-old saying he's the father of a 100-year-old son. Maitreya recounts that all the disciples know that Shakyamuni was born some 8 decades before, left his palace in his late 20s, and after undergoing austerities, discovered the middle way and awakened under the Bodhi tree 4 decades previous to his present expounding of the Lotus Sutra. This question leads to the climactic teaching of the whole sutra, the revelation in chapter 16 by Shakyamuni Buddha that he only seems to be born, awaken, and pass away as a teaching expedient. He declares that in actuality, he has been awakened and practicing through an inconceivably long lifespan, and for many ages past and future is present to awaken beings. The extent of this time frame is depicted with vast astronomical metaphors. The Buddha explains that he appears to live a limited life and pass away into nirvana only as a skillful means for the sake of all those beings who would be dissuaded from their own diligent conduct and miss the importance of their own attentive practice by the knowledge of the Buddha's omnipresence. The Buddha illustrates the situation with one of the parables characteristic of the Lotus Sutra, in which a good physician returns home to find his many sons delusional after having taken poison. The physician offers them good medicine as an antidote, but many refuse to take it because of their delusions. They are finally willing to take and be cured of by the medicine only when brought to their senses by grief after hearing a false report that their father has passed away. So that's his sense, is that we would not take the medicine of the Dharma if we could just depend on having the Buddha around, So I always like to think about these really bizarre and unusual stories in the Lotus Sutras. What kind of teaching is there? What's really going on, You think about, you can just imagine his disciples are like, what? So then they're like, and I thought this was so great. Yeah, we totally believe you, Buddha, that you trained all these millions of bodhisattvas in the brief time since you were enlightened. We know you would never lie, but suppose some new person comes along after you're gone. How can they believe it? How should we explain it then? This has to be the politest expression of disbelief and the politest request for some explanation. And the explanation is, of course, even more astounding. Could you believe the Buddha never dies, but just keeps teaching in one world system or another, one civilization or another, one body form or another? That he keeps training people in the Bodhisattva path eon after eon, millions and millions of years? It seems a bit fantastical. And yet, I think we have to clear our minds of some preconceptions about the world. If we think in terms of transfers of energy and intention rather than in terms of bodies that are born, grow old, decline, and die, then what? Is the Buddha describing a form of pure creative energy that is constantly transmitted through time, through various human bodies, through lifetimes? We're humans. We think in terms of human forms. But look at the legacy energies of your own family generations. Maybe it's a love of learning, or a kind of fearless adventure, or striving for success, or trauma, and on and on. Because the form of the human body dies, we think of death as the end. Maybe Buddha energy just emerges as a new Buddha in a new time. And of course, just keeps on teaching. Furthermore, in the Mahayana Sutras, the Buddha clearly refers to other world systems, other universes, other chiliocosms, myriad universes. Was he just exaggerating wildly? Or did he simply report something that physicists are just now discovering, that multiple universes are not just possible, but quite likely? I once thought that the Mahayana literature was outlandish exaggeration, a kind of fever dream, but, well, so the Mahayana tradition is this great world literature, and it has this flavor of abundance. Lex Hickson refers to it as cosmopoetry. It's not a book report, It's not just poetic, it's counterfactual. But then we have to ask ourselves, do facts explain everything? So this body of literature forces us to examine our own limited perception of reality, our own biases and beliefs about how things work, our own cramped worldview, our own logic systems, and it kind of explodes our minds. That's its function. It's operating with vast, vast time scales, billions and billions of years, vast numbers of people, of things, really elaborate metaphors, these metaphors of as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, which appear over and over and over again. Very colorful stories that stick in your mind, magical deeds, Vimalakirti's room that holds, hundreds of thousands of people, it's 10 feet by 10 feet square. So you can imagine the audience at that time. I always like to think of these people that it's like 2,500 years ago, So there's no TV, there's no internet, there's limited travel, typically on foot from one tiny village to another. Imagine how dazzled they must have been by these stories, right? This is magical. However, life today, we still deal in inconceivable numbers. Think of our population or our national debt. We have space travel. We live in palaces, basically, with pleasures and conveniences that could never have been imagined. You imagine the frontiers of science, of gene splicing, of AI, astrophysics, of medicine. Are these sort of obviously understandable? I think about what that would look like to people from the Buddhist time, if they could just like peer into the future and see what we're doing, Yes, we get into a giant metal tube, hundreds of us, that lifts us up in the air and transports us thousands of miles in a few hours. We have devices that allow us to see and hear people hundreds, no, thousands of miles away, as clearly as if they were standing right before us. We travel in conveyances capable of moving over 100 miles an hour, coaches with luxurious seats where the air is cooled and warm to suit our taste, where music is playing to entertain us, with no musicians and no horses to pull it. We wear on our arms tiny machines that can tell us the exact time of day, the weather, our heart rate. Oh yeah, that's a thing. How fast we are running, what our next appointment is. Oh yeah, appointments are another thing. How can I explain that? Come see the Costco, the thousands of foods, flowers, medicinals, toys, toilet paper. That's a thing as well. All arrayed in an enormous indoor space, cooled and warm for our comfort. The ware is so bountiful that people have to push giant wagons around the place to gather astounding amounts of food and goods. But that's okay, because we have devices to keep that food very, very, very cold, to chop it up, to cook it, and to wash the dishes when we've eaten. What part of modern life would even be conceivable to someone in the Buddha's time, 2,500 years ago? What part, even if faithfully described, would make any sense at all? Zoom? Shopping online? Psychotherapy? Skyscrapers? Heart surgery? Traffic lights? I don't know. Band-aids, maybe? That might be understandable. So the facts of our lives, the everyday life, the existence that we're living, would be at least as incomprehensible to someone in the Buddha's time as the seemingly outlandish stories of the Lotus Sutra and the whole Mahayana body of literature. Um, so that really makes me think about the Earth Store Bodhisattvas. What about these Earth Store Bodhisattvas, millions in number, Have you spotted them? Any of them? I've encountered many of them. I can't count them all. They seem to come out of nowhere, space, or out of the earth, in a time of need. They teach by their very being, by who they are, as much as by what they do. So have you seen any of these bodhisattvas? You've encountered some? Yeah?
Even animals.
Even animals, yeah. Yeah. And I think about, where do they come from? Do they even know who they are? So in the Genjo Koan, Dogen says, when Buddhas are truly Buddhas, they do not necessarily notice that they are Buddhas. However, they are actualized Buddhas who go on actualizing Buddhas. So what do? Some of them are dentists, nurses, parents, road workers, executives, soldiers, architects, scientists, writers, therapists, teachers. Some are children, some are pets, some are obstacles, some are our critics, our enemies, our tainted heroes. Sometimes we only realize much, much later who they really were. Which leads us to this question. Are we the Earth Store Bodhisattvas? What would that imply? What would it mean for your life? How would you understand your role in the world differently? Well, you think, that's probably not me. Well, why not? What makes you think you're not a bodhisattva? What if that is only the training? All of the things that you think don't make you a bodhisattva. There's a kind of call, and there's a kind of responsibility. Can we ignore it? Sure, many people do. Have we not come out of the earth? So Leighton points out that Dogen connects the earth to the sense of space and its open spaciousness. So it's a space beneath the earth that these bodhisattvas come from. He says, we should not only realize springing out of the earth. In turning the flower of Dharma, we should also realize springing out of space. So in the sutra, the Buddha speaks of the bodhisattvas emerging from the space below the earth, an earth storehouse. That's the storehouse of bodhisattvas, the earth store bodhisattvas. Well, that's kind of daunting. Yeah, here we are at this time, in this place, with everything that's going on. I think, how should we train? How should we cultivate wisdom? How should we cultivate compassion? Hint, it's not by closing our eyes to suffering or shrinking from the truly terrible news we are immersed in. It's also not allowing ourselves to be overwhelmed to the point of paralysis by it. Like a medic on a battlefield, we have a job to do for the ones who are right in front of us, regardless of the vast carnage that surrounds us. We don't have time or the luxury of avoidance, no matter how painful the situation. Our presence is critical. Our wisdom, still imperfect, is called for. Our compassion, still emerging, is needed here, right now. To actualize it, we need to clear a space of stillness and silence so that we can listen for our innate wisdom and actualize it. There's so much noise in the world, in our heads, in our interactions with other beings, that it's almost impossible to breathe. You've all experienced this. How many unread emails exactly? Meditation is like a beautiful tree-lined park in the middle of a busy city, a fresh, peaceful place to stop, sit down, and let your body and mind rest, fully awake, quiet, and still. Of course, this takes practice. Out of the mind and heart that are then refreshed, awake, open, spacious, and free, our natural wisdom and compassion can flow unhindered. Our life is a gift we've been given that we are constantly offering others. In a world of selfish desires, striving, grasping, ignorance, and hostility, that is quite revolutionary. Now that the earth is cracked open and freed us, there's no going back. So the real question is, what will you do? That's the question. So that's my talk on the Earth Store Bodhisattvas. I'm happy to entertain questions if you have questions. They don't even have to be about the talk, any questions at all. Yeah.
Just a reflection, I love how you said the bodhisattvas don't even know necessarily that they're bodhisattvas. And that's why I thought about vow.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, like taking the vow is like a reminder. It's like I may not know what I am, but I'm taking this vow right now.
Yeah.
That I can kind of hang on to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the through line really for everything that you're doing and thinking and saying. It's like that's the through line, is the vow. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can help me unpack just something that I'm feeling, because as you spoke about, and I can feel it still, as you spoke about the Buddha teaching endless through all time and weather, it opens my heart so big that I feel like crying.
When the Buddha spoke about, I missed that.
Just teaching throughout all time.
Through eon after eon, training the bodhisattvas.
It's something about like my internal vision just opened, and that opened my heart, and I guess I'm wanting to explain it, but then it's just deeply touching.
Yeah. It's a felt sense. It's not a thought.
Yeah.
Something I've been curious about, and I came across, is a bodhisattva the same as a good Samaritan? And something I came across was that the bodhisattva's main thing is to convey the Dharma, not necessarily to fix everything like someone else does.
It's not a giant to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard for people to get that. They feel like, oh, this vow means I have this giant to-do list, you know? Yeah. And I've talked about this, about how if you have the idea that you have to go out and fix things in the world, that's your job. It's a never-ending task. But if you realize I can free absolutely everyone from my anger by not allowing anger to overwhelm me, you know.
It's a very subtle job.
So then I'm freeing everybody from that anyway, right? Yeah. So.
We have Genevieve.
Genevieve, how good to see you.
Hello. I'm so sorry I'm not there in person.
Oh, well, we're happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you. So the first thing I thought was that Buddha, I mean, it completely makes sense what he says, because it's I don't have the words for this, but I guess it's Buddha-ness or Bodhisattva-ness that flows through physical beings. The physical beings are not the Buddha-ness. Does
That's
that,
right.
so,
yeah.
and yes.
It's the great activity.
Yeah. And they were attaching it to his physical self.
That's
and
right.
his like earthly birth date. And he was saying that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Exactly.
And I remembered this time when I was still living in Austin, and I pulled up to something on Guadalupe, and my car was at an incline, and I didn't use I didn't put it in park. And I got out of the car and I started walking toward my store, and my car started moving backwards straight into Guadalupe. Like it was gonna ram into a whole bunch of cars. and I couldn't get to it in time. And out of nowhere, this complete stranger appeared and pushed my car up the incline. And he didn't look especially strong, and held it until I could get there and put it in park. And I didn't know, I went right after that to an acupuncture appointment with a Buddhist, and I really didn't know anything about Buddhism then. And she said, look at all these bodhisattvas appearing out of nowhere for you. And that's what this reminds me of. It's not, as you say, a to-do list. It's a allowing the great activity to flow through you in the moment as appropriate. It's
Yes,
not something you can plan.
no, yeah. It's not something you can check off as done, you know,
Right. And it
right?
isn't even you. Like
That's
if
right.
you're really in the moment, it's a flow.
That's right.
It's like the vowel moving through you.
Yeah, yeah. So the Tibetans talk about this as the creative intelligence of the universe. So it's an activity. It's not a being. So and I think that's a nice way to think about it because you then don't attach it to persons or even to specific acts.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've had that flow through me at
Mhm.
times. And the quality of my experience of everything is just indescribably other when that's happening.
Yes. And so when we practice, we're illuminating what hinders that,
Yeah.
the ways we sort of get in our own way,
Mm.
ways these great big brains try and, like complicate things in our lives. Yeah.
Sometimes I think of it as a kind of a radio frequency,
Oh,
but
interesting.
our tuners
Uh-huh.
are, are getting old and full of gunk, and there's lots of static, and but the frequency is there. All we need to do is tune into it.
Yes, and that's what we wrestle with is our own unwillingness.
So it would be silly to say the radio is singing.
Right, right. Or because this radio is broken, there is no music.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly this kind of teaching. And I think it's so interesting because it does kind of blow your mind open when you're reading in these Mahayana texts. We're sort of wedded to this kind of what I think of as driver's license manual thinking and writing. Like so pedestrian, it's so mundane, it's so fact and pragmatically oriented, and that's our standard, which is
Hmm.
kind of sad, actually. Yeah, well, thanks for your question. And that's a
Thank
great
you.
story. That's a great story of an actual Earth Store Bodhisattva materializing out of nowhere, right? Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? It's a very beautiful day here in Austin. Warm and nice. It's great to be here. I'm really happy to be in front of everybody again and having a chance to get connected. Yeah. Sabbatical was long, but I did get a lot of work done on the book project, so I was happy about that. So, yeah. And now my editor's working with me, so things actually look like they're going to happen. In the middle of the writing, you never know, you're just like, oh, I wonder if this is actually going to turn into anything. Yeah, so hopefully we'll have more to share with you around that. Yeah. Anything else? Last unfinished business? All right, we're starting the intensive. That's the next thing that's going to happen.